Here's the map. You're pretty much spread all over the country, and I guess if you were to do like an east and west type of thing, here's what it would look like. I'll circle it for you right here. On the east, you would have Oklahoma State, Kansas, K-State, Iowa State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Clemson, Florida State, and UCF. Well, what do we have brewing here with the Clemson Tigers, Florida State Seminoles, and the Big 12? This is a situation I've been following very close for the past couple of days, and I've been holding off on making a video till we get some more information. I now feel like we're at the point where we can talk about this because it's not a secret anymore with what's going on. Let me catch you up to speed on things though if you're not too familiar with what's been unfolding the past year or so. For starters, years ago, news comes out that Texas and Oklahoma, they're leaving the Big 12 and they're heading to the SEC. Then last year we saw the Pac-12 completely explode and all the teams either went to the Big 12 or the Big 10. Meanwhile, all that's been going on, the ACC hasn't done themselves any favors by just sitting back watching and relaxing. This isn't just in college football, it's in every business. You either adapt or die. Your choice. The ACC has failed to adapt, therefore they're behind in every aspect that really matters. Therefore, Florida State and Clemson, they won't out. We've already talked about the Granite Wright situation, long story short. They've signed a contract with the ACC to stay there for a while, and if they do want to leave, they're going to have to pay the buyout fee. Some people think it's a big deal. To me, it's not, because if you do join the Big 10 or the SEC, you'd eventually make that money back. You got to look at leaving the ACC from a long-term perspective, not a 6 to 8 year perspective. Everything I just told you, that is making an extremely long story short as to where we are at this current point in time. Continuing along here, as where it stands today, Florida State and Clemson are members of the ACC. However, it is not a matter of an if, it is a matter of when will they leave. They're going to leave, not a secret to anybody. That's not some shocking and breaking news. The first choice for Clemson and Florida State was obviously the SEC. But apparently and allegedly, the SEC doesn't want anything to do with Florida State and Clemson, and if they go after anybody out of the ACC conference, it's going to be a school like North Carolina or Virginia. So that then led Florida State and Clemson say, okay, if we can't join the SEC, we'll join the second best conference, the Big 10, and that one makes a ton of sense. Moral of the story is, that's their top two options. SEC number 1, Big 10 number 2. I know what you're sitting there saying, well, Matt, if Florida State and Clemson, their top two options are the Big 10 SEC, why are we sitting up here talking about the Big 12? And that's a great question, my friend. I'd love to answer it. Within the past 24 to 48 hours, it is being reported by Ross Dellinger, to be more specific here, that the Big 12 has already started their preliminary discussions with Florida State and Clemson. Dellinger also stated this, quote unquote, I think there is at least early conversation between the Big 12 and those schools about the possibility. I don't know that it's anything serious yet because they do have to get out of the ACC, whether that's through a settlement or a court ruling, so we could be months, if not years away from something. But that does seem to be one of the possibilities, is the Big 12. Interesting. What do y'all think about that? Let me dumb this down for you because I know some of this can be confusing. Like I've stated, Florida State and Clemson, first option SEC, second option Big 10. Their third option on the board that they've already started conversations with is the Big 12. But here's where things get interesting, and it's the reason you should pay close attention to everything going on. Not only has Florida State and Clemson started their conversations with the Big 12, but their conversations with the SEC and Big 10 has ceased. They're not even talking to them anymore at the moment. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is what changes all of this. Let me give you a great example of what this is like. This is the equivalent to when you're in high school and you're talking to 3 to 4 different girls at one time. You like girl number 1 the best, but she's not texting you back. You like girl number 2 the best after girl number 1, but she's not responding to your text either. Girl number 3, you kind of like her, but not as much as girl number 1 and 2, but when you text her, she responds. Although you prefer to have girl number 1 and 2 over girl number 3, the only option you have available right now is girl number 3. You see what I'm saying? That's what's going on here. I'm not saying they're about to make this official, not by any stretch of the imagination. There's still so much stuff that's got to go on and many obstacles they got to overcome. But as where it stands right now, girl number 3 is the only one responding. If you are a Florida State or Clemson fan, I'm just assuming that you prefer to join the SEC because they're the best, right? As where it stands right now, I have a hard time believing that's ever going to happen. Regionally, I would love for it to happen. It just makes so much sense, but I don't think it's going to come to fruition. If anything, it'd be the Big 10 or the Big 12. And like I stated, as where it stands right now, the Big Ten ceased your conversation, so you're just talking to the Big 12. Although it's nothing, it's something. You're not going on a date or anything with the Big 12. You're just talking, but it's the only person you're talking to. The Big 12 has, how many is it? Is it 18? No, it's 16 teams, right? So if you had Clemson and then Florida State, that'd push it to 18. Somebody made this map, and we're going to take a look at another one. So here's what the new and improved Big 12 will look like. And we'll talk about this in just a second. If the Big 12 can land Florida State and Clemson, that's huge. That wouldn't just be a home run. That'd be a grand slam. That's knocking it out of the park. Here's the map. You're pretty much spread all over the country. And I guess if you were to do like an east and west type of thing, here's what it would look like. I'll circle it for you right here. On the east, you would have Oklahoma State, Kansas, K-State, Iowa State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Clemson, Florida State, and UCF. On the west, you would have your Arizona schools, BYU, Utah, Colorado, Coach Primetime, and all your Texas schools. Someone else made this a potential Big 12 conference. This isn't official or anything. We're just playing around here. I saw it on Twitter. I figured, hey, why not? We'll throw it in the video. Thought it was interesting. This is if the Big 12 also gets, I believe, Virginia Tech and Miami. That would then push them to 20, and in the East, you would have your Kansas schools, Iowa State, Cincinnati, all the East schools we already talked about. In the West, as you can see, your Arizona schools, BYU, Utah, Colorado, Texas schools, and Oak State. Before last week, if you were to ask me, yo, Matt, what percentage of a chance would you give Clemson and Florida State leaving the ACC and going to the Big 12? I'd say around 1 to 2%. But now, after hearing the SEC and Big Ten have ceased conversations and the Big 12 is starting theirs, I'd put it around 15 to 20. Granted, 15-20% is not high, but it's most certainly higher than 1 to 2%. Let's talk about this, though, and we haven't even brought it up, so my apologies for that. If this does happen, hypothetically speaking for the sake of this video, how does Florida State and Clemson actually fare out in this conference? Well, on the bright side, it is much easier, and I mean much easier than the SEC and Big Ten, because that new SEC with Texas and Oklahoma and the Big Ten with all the additions they're getting is a gauntlet. But when you take a look at this map here, if Clemson and Florida State join the Big 12 tomorrow, they'd be favorites to win the conference. Who's the best team in the Big 12 currently outside of Utah? Oklahoma State, Kansas State, maybe? Utah is a really good team, but like I said, Clemson and Florida State join the Big 12 tomorrow, they're easily favorites up there with Utah. Whereas, if they join the SEC, they're not going to be favorites to win that. They're probably not even in the top 5. Nobody's picking Florida State over Bama, Georgia, Texas, probably even Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and what about Missouri? They're going to be a top 10 team. My point is, if you join the SEC, you're sort of slightly above middle of the pack. You join the Big 12, though, both teams are going to be in the top 4, top 5 easily. No ifs, ands, or buts. And I want to give a major shout out to Greg Swaim on Twitter. He's been covering on this nonstop. He covers all this conference realignment stuff. And he is the same guy. He was my source that was telling me weeks before the Pac-12 was going to explode that they were going to explode. So if you want any updates on all this, feel free to follow him on Twitter because he's on it nonstop. He's been stating on Twitter the same stuff I've been saying. Like I said, this isn't some conspiracy theory or whatnot. This is proven that the ACC, not the ACC, my apologies, but Florida State and Clemson, they've been talking to the Big 12. There's many more things I could say. One it off here. Let me know your thoughts and all this down below. But roll a minute.